validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt up on the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher constantly, making my own climb. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. Whoa. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision. Cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield. I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision. Cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we're talking about this, that, and everything in between. And man, I told y'all I had trouble trying to get stuff listed for the show because every time I get ready to start talking about something, this man to come and did something else, and I'm sitting over here thinking, man, I'm not going to get me a lineup for quite a while because Trump then came over here and started talking about some stuff this week again. Man ain't even got into the office yet, and he done already made some jaw drops, make some people mad, and I'm just sitting over here like, wow, we got so much going on that we can't even move forward before like history in the making is happening. So today we're looking at a lot of the revolutions that are being claimed by Donald Trump, and some of the stuff that's being stated throughout the weekend that people are talking about, and we're gonna hash out some of the stuff that's true, some of the stuff that's just overstated, and we're gonna get to the bottom of some of these things. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe, because I mean, y'all make us who we are. If y'all got some questions or comments y'all want to throw into the comment section, if you want to be on the show in real time, you can click this link. You can approve the mic, approve the camera, get on here in real time as long as you're over the age of 18, because this is an adult podcast. But keep your comments appropriate. Open mic, open forum. open-minded discussions. So, I mean, you don't have to agree with what I have to say, and I don't have to agree with what you have to say, but we can sit here and talk about the topics at hand. So here on This and That, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between, we're going to be talking about a lot of things today. But today we're kind of trying to theme it around all of the new things that has been declared about the taxes that's supposed to be happening in 4 years that could have us had hoped. Remember, we're live 7 nights a week. We typically start about 16 minutes ago at about 10 o'clock Central Time, which is 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 7 o'clock California time. California's still burning to the ground. Going to keep giving you updates on that. While we are 48 hours away from TikTok going dark, we are going to keep giving you information on that as well. Make sure that you guys join me as we are diving into this particular challenge about the breakdown of Trump's 2025 tax revolution and what it really means for the rest of us. So we've all been waiting for it, and it's finally here. Trump's 2025 tax revolution is set to shake the economy to its core, and individual taxpayers will be impacted in a big way. With promises to cut red tape, boost economic growth, and put more money back in our pockets, this reform has the potential to be a game changer. But what does it really entail, and how will it affect you? The current tax system is a mess, and we all know it. It's overly complicated, unfair, and downright frustrating. Many of us feel like we're throwing our hard-earned money down the black hole with no end in sight. The tax code is riddled with loopholes, and big corporations often end up paying less than their fair share. And it's no wonder citizens are fed up and demanding changes. Year after year, we're forced to navigate the tendencies and time-consuming process of filing taxes. And this is a very tedious tendency, only to be left feeling like we're being taken advantage of, because a lot of us were doing all right until we finished doing our taxes, come to find out that our boss didn't take enough money out of our check, and now we got to take our bill money and send it to the IRS because we have to make sure that we are not in default on our taxes, because they will start garnishing wages, seizing assets, freezing bank accounts. It's a system that's crying out for reform, and Trump's tax revolution promises to be that answer. But can it really deliver on its lofty promises? The dissatisfaction with the current tax system is palpable. We're tired of feeling like we're being held hostage by outdated and unfair systems, and it's time for a change. And Trump's tax revolution is being touted as the solution we've all been waiting for. But what exactly does it entail, and will it really make a difference in our lives? Trump's proposed tax changes are designed to stimulate economic growth, increasing competitiveness, and simplify the tax code by slashing rates, eliminating loopholes, and reducing the burden on small businesses and individuals. The plan aims to put more money back in our pockets and give the economy a much needed boost. Typically, because the bottom 99% of Americans spend every dollar that they get. So if Donald Trump puts more money back into the pockets of the bottom 99%, the bottom 99% will go on a spending spree, almost like that episode on The Simpsons. And that will stimulate the economy. But guess where the money parks itself? In the bank account of the shareholders of the companies that we're spending all of our money in. So think about that. But how will these changes impact the broader economy? And what are the potential downsides? One of the most significant proposed changes is the reduction in the corporate tax rate by slashing the rate from 35 to 20. Trump's plan aims to make the U.S. more competitive on a global stage now. And this could lead to a surge in our economic growth, increased investments, and more jobs. Notice how Bitcoin is still hovering at almost $100,000. However, critics argue that this could also lead to a blowout in the national deficit. Another key aspect of this plan is simplification of the tax code by eliminating loopholes and deductions, where Trump's revolutionary promise is to make filing taxes easier and fairer for everyone. So this could lead to significant reductions in tax preparation costs and decrease in number of audits. However, some argue that this could also lead to a loss of crucial revenue stream for the government. The proposed changes also includes a reduction in the number of tax brackets from 7 to 3. He did claim during his campaign that he was going to have 2, where there would be a 30% and a 15%. But either way, this could lead to a significant reduction in tax rates for many Americans, putting more money back into their pockets. However, critics argue that this could also lead to an increase in inequality, and as the wealth continues to be beneficial at the expense of the poor and middle class. So the wealthy is going to see a lot more of the money staying in their pockets than the less fortunate. And that's going to be one of the cost of inflation due to the tariffs that's going to be raising the cost for import export. So those of us that are going to have less money to pay in taxes, we're still going to be paying more money for the cost of products. So our dollar for dollar value is going to be significantly less. When I did that show a week or two ago about inflation and its impact on the value or your spending power per se, that even though you're making a larger quantity of money because your money goes a shorter distance, you actually have to make a significantly larger quantity of money in order to offset the expense. Max Opposer's in the house. What's going on, bro? How's Joe doing? What's that going on? And one of the most controversial aspects of Trump's tax plan is the proposed elimination of the estate tax. So look, y'all, I tell you what, anybody who got money in their family, you're going to want that estate tax to disappear. But I mean, you could throw all your stuff into a trust and you still don't have to worry about that estate tax. Either way, this tax is also known as the death tax. So this is levied on the estate of the deceased. And the estate is not just the house, it's all the assets that the deceased had. And that quantity of assets has a dollar value to it, and that dollar value is considered a profit to you, which actually turns into taxable income for you. But you also have to understand that along with that person's positive assets, you also bring in that person's debt. So he says that he bought a property in Egypt. What should you do now? Well, I mean, I told you that if you bought a property in Egypt and you're not living in Egypt, you should turn it into a rental property so that you can collect tax. You can collect revenue from Egypt. Matter of fact, if you're buying a property in a different country, you open up a bank account in a different country, leave your money in that country. That's the only country you got to pay taxes on, because the only thing that the American government is going to know about is the money that you're claiming from the American government. But when we start talking about tax evasion, you got to start dealing with the fact that if you don't report everything and they decide to audit it and they see a wire transfer to another country, and then for some reason they get access to information that goes to show that that money belongs to you, then they can get you for tax evasion. So you want to be sure that you be careful about that. He says, what is the best way to avoid phantom taxes? Well, what's going on, Wacky Z? What is the best way to avoid paying taxes? That'll be a how would you put that? The auto correct messed you up there. One of the best ways to avoid having to pay taxes is to technically have on paper more debt than you owe. A lot of the small businesses with the LLCs and the C corporations have this capability of doing so. Things like buying vehicles and getting 100% depreciation value in the first year. Things like buying properties and getting taxable deductions for the mortgage rates. Things like taking out cash loans and using those cash loans because debt repayment is not a profit. See what I'm saying? So if you borrow $100,000, just because you got $100,000 this year doesn't mean that you have $100,000, because you're paying on the person that you borrowed the $100,000 from. So And this is when we were talking about the difference between loans being loans and loans being investments, because if you can borrow against a loan with a lower interest rate and put it into a stock option with a higher interest rate, the difference between the interest rate of the loan versus the interest rate of the stock is the cost of doing business, and the profit on top of that goes into your pocket. So we were talking about that on the show before. Make sure you guys like and subscribe as you slide through. So I just want to tell you that if you bought a property and you're paying on a mortgage, tax deduction. Right now, you're paying on student loans, tax deduction. I told you guys before, if you got kids in public school and you're donating money to the public school to improve their budget, tax deduction. You know, there's a lot of things that you can do that is a tax deduction, but you're going to be spending money somewhere. The only difference is instead of you handing a chunk of change to the 500 guys that don't have to work so that they can receive a salary to make laws that piss you off, instead of doing that, you could put your money in places where you would prefer to see improvement financially, and then you would be able to use that as a tax deduction or tax write-off if you're donating to nonprofit scenarios, because a public school is a nonprofit scenario. It's government funded and it runs out of money when the budget runs out. So if you add money to the budget and stimulate the budget, that they're going to buy more stuff. So, but your kid gets treated better in school because the teachers are going to love the fact that you're supplying their everything, and you end up getting a better way to go instead of having to pay for private school. Because if you take the money from private school and pay for public school, you end up having the same quality education if everybody did it, because it's a tax deduction. But private school isn't a tax deduction because it's private school. It's just paying a bill. So while many proponents argue that it's unfair taxes that penalizes hardworking Americans, critics argue that it's a crucial revenue stream for the government and helps to reduce income inequality. That is a big lie. But President-elect Donald Trump has announced plans to establish a new agency called the External Revenue Service. I know y'all have seen it all over the place, which intends to launch on January 20th, 2025, coinciding with his inauguration. This agency so this is going to be the day after TikTok is banned that we're going to have an external revenue service. So this agency aims to collect tariffs and other revenue from foreign sources, marking a significant shift in his approach to federal revenue generation. The External Revenue Service will focus on collecting tariffs, duties, and all revenue from foreign entities, which is going to cost us inflation on the cost of doing business when we're dealing with buying stuff from overseas. So you may very well find that American made is going to turn out to be a whole lot cheaper than foreign distributors when all of this stuff goes into effect, which is still going to negatively impact the lower class or the financially strained. In contrast, the current reliance on the Internal Revenue Service for domestic taxation, Trump is proposing the broad tariffs as a cornerstone of his economic agenda, including a potential 60% tariff on imports from China and 10% to 20% on all other imports. Now, why do you think that he's taxing China so much higher than all other entities? If you guys remember, we borrowed all that money from China during COVID. So the $30 trillion of deficit, guess who owns all of those treasury bonds? So if we tax China instead of, it's like, I told you to put it on my tab. So instead of me paying my tab, I'm taxing you for my services so that we break even a whole lot sooner, but I still don't have to give you no money. That's what he's doing right now. He also threatened additional tariffs on Canada and Mexico unless they address specific issues like the immigration and drug trafficking. And he's also, remember you guys, I was talking about on Monday, how he was planning on trying to acquisition Canada and change the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. So he's making a lot of power moves over here, and he's using money to make money for him, and money's talking. So he, unlike a lot of other presidents that would have talked a big game and they have to convince 500 people in the House and the Senate to agree with him, he's showing you the numbers. He's like, look, if we do it this way, we'll turn a profit. Technically, since America's a business, as long as we're turning a profit, it's supposed to make sense until war breaks out. So currently, the collection of tariffs is managed by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which operates under Department of Homeland Security. Analysts have noted that creating a new agency may be redundant since existing agencies already perform these functions, but establishing this new agency will require congressional approval. And given that the Republicans are holding the majority of both House and Senate right now, Trump may have some legislative support for this initiative. And however you guys put it together, the feasibility and necessity of such an agency has been questioned by the experts who suggest it may complicate existing processes rather than streamline them. Well, think about this. If Border Patrol is not trying to collect money, they have no reason to seize your assets. They should really be focusing on legal goods being imported and exported out of the country, and making sure that they don't have any extra people in shipping containers that don't have a legal document that says it's supposed to be in America. Really, we shouldn't even have people in shipping containers to begin with, but gotta at least have a U.S. passport. These guys, they got too many things on their plates. But in the U.S., we're looking at another thing that's going to be making a big impact. As of, I want to say, a day or two ago, when the discussion about child tax credits for the dads came up, because in the United States, the child tax credit allows parents to claim a tax benefit for their dependent children, but eligibility is not strictly limited to the fathers at this moment who pay child support. So Donald Trump has not officially proposed a policy that would allow only fathers to who pay child support to claim the children on their taxes. However, the discussion surrounding the child tax credits have been prominent in his recent proposals, particularly regarding potential expansions and modifications to the existing system. Under Trump's previous administration, the CTC was increased from $1,000 to $2,000 per qualifying child, and the increase is set to revert back to $1,000 unless Congress takes action to extend it beyond 2025. Trump has expressed interest in significantly expanding the CTC with suggestions from his running mate, J.D. Vance, who is now the vice president, proposing an increase to $5,000 per qualifying child. And this expansion aims to provide more financial support to families, but does not specifically limit claims based on child support payments. Now, one of the things that single fathers have understood is that a lot of the times that there is a massive custody battle, more so because of the person in possession of the child is more likely to be the one that's going to be receiving all of this government funds and government assistance, and the person in possession of the child is more than likely not going to have to pay child support for the child. And not a lot of scenarios occur where it is favorable for the person who doesn't have possession of the child, because that person is going to not only pay child support, not get any tax deductions for it, but also have issues with timeshare arrangements where they're not going to have accessibility or parental rights towards the child's physical, mental health, and education, which deprives the non-custodial parent of their 14th Amendment constitutional right to fundamentally parent their child. And it is still an expense for that parent with no financial deduction benefit from taxation. So it puts a heavy strain, more often than not, on the fathers, because this country still, after the July 2023 bill passed to make single fathers more accessible to their children from a constitutional level, the country still leans towards putting the children with the women, regardless of whether or not the woman is qualified to have the child, regardless of whether or not the man is more qualified to have the child or not. So with that being said, we have more often than not a system where the child is with the mother or a female, and the father has to pay child support to the person in possession of the child. in the past, some women have used this as an opportunity to monetize having children. One of the things that Bill Clinton changed with the tax credits was that women that were relying on the government assistance would have to go into a back to work career situation where they were either getting an education or going back to a part-time job, not just laying around receiving money while sitting on Section 8. So a lot of things have been changing over the years that brings balance back to the fairness of our country, because you have to remember back in the 1900s when women didn't have jobs and all they were doing was taking care of the family. If the father was no longer in the house, the woman's sole job was to take care of the kids. So all of that government assistance made sense. But with our alpha boss ladies in 2025, where they can go out and get a Fortune 500 job where they're making $100,000 a year, it makes absolutely no sense why she's got the kids and he's paying child support for her to get her hair, fingernails, and brand new cell phone, Gucci purse, and all this other stuff. It's supposed to be for the kids. It's supposed to be, if you've got extra money in your pocket, you should take that money and put it towards a child's college education. Put it into a trust, invest it into stocks and bonds. And then when a child is 18, the child can get a free ride through college, or you can buy the child a house where the child has their own place to stay. You can build a generational wealth with the child support money that you don't need, instead of making yourself look pretty. For what? I don't understand that. And men who have children specifically work all the time. They're paying for babysitters and everything like that. And then they come and spend a little bit of time with the children. So this type of dynamic has always been a concern. So now when we start looking at the things that are changing about the here in 2025, the expectations for the single fathers who are paying child support to have more accessibility to tax credits, to be able to claim their children as dependents since they're paying for these children, that actually is going to make things a little less stressful for those people. Now, before we go into that, let's talk about what do you got to do to qualify to get those tax credits as a parent in general. To claim a child for a child tax credit, the child must be considered a dependent of yours on your tax return. And this means that you must provide more than half of the child's financial support during the year and meet other criteria. And this is the biggest reason why, since men are paying for the child support, that likely they are expecting to cover more than half of the expected cost of living for the child, because they're subsidizing the mom's standard of living with the child support payments. So she doesn't have to pay for that for the kid. So what's left to pay for? That's going to be debatable. But there are 7 other qualifying tests that must be met to claim child support tax credits. 1, the child must be under 17 at the end of the tax year. So they can't turn 18 in December and get a tax credit. The child must be your biological child, stepchild, sibling, or a descendant like a grandchild. Sometimes I believe that the foster homes can get a tax credit of some sort when they're in possession of the children, but for the most part, they're supposed to be a biological child, a stepchild, meaning that they are the husband or wife's child, a sibling, like if the parents are no longer there and you're taking care of your younger siblings, or a descendant, like if you're taking care of your children's children, because your children are no longer around, whether they've passed on or have lost custody for some reason. Those are the major reasons why you would end up with the tax credit. Now, the support is another thing. The child cannot have provided more than half of their own support, which means if your kid's got a job, they can claim themselves on their own taxes. They can't be claimed as a dependent. The dependent status requires the child must be claimed as a dependent on your tax return, and the child must be a U.S. citizen, national, or resident alien. Now, there are a lot of things that goes on about that, because you could be a first generation American citizen. Your kid could have been born out of the country and then you come back into the country. There's a lot of things going on with that, but that as long as you meet those qualifications, you're already good. And then the residency requires the child must have lived with you for more than half of the tax year, with some exceptions for divorced or separated parents, which means that if you have joint custody, where it's going to be like a 60-40 split, because one person is going to have the child during the school week, Monday through Friday, and the other person is going to have the child on the weekend. So you're going to have one person that's probably going to have the child 2 or 3 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year, and then may end up getting that extra 2 or 3 months over the summer holiday, whereas the other person is probably going to have about 6 to 8 months out of the year. So being able to split that is an issue that needs to be addressed, because also you got to think that even when there is a joint custody arrangement, the child is staying at the dad's house, but the dad is still making monthly payments to the mom. The child is staying with the father during summer break, but dad's still paying mom for child support, even though the child is staying with the father. The father is not getting a break during the 3 months the child is living with the father. The mom's still getting the check, even though mom doesn't have to pay for the kid because the kid's with the dad. We don't have very many families where people are going to show mercy and say, you know what, since you've got them, you can keep the installments this month, especially if it comes out in a court order. Doesn't matter if the child's with the person or not. You got to file a petition with the court and say, hey, I'm going to have the child for X number of days. Can I get an exemption for this period of time since the child's going to be in my possession? And that costs more money sometimes than it's worth if you don't already have an active child custody case. Now, the filing status is going to require the child must not have filed a joint return with you or with someone else. For example, when your teenage child is in a relationship with somebody else and they file joint somewhere else, the child can't be used on more than one tax return, except in specific cases where they're only claiming a refund of withheld taxes from whatever small income job that they got. Now, while paying child support may influence custody arrangements, as I was just recently discussing, it's also going to influence who has primary physical custody of the child. It does not automatically grant tax benefits. So typically, the custodial parent, the one whom the child lives with for more than half of the year, claims the child unless there is an agreement allowing the non-custodial parent to do so. Now, you could sit there and battle it out with the IRS, and you can claim the child knowing that the other person is going to claim the child, and then let the IRS figure it out. But when you do stuff like that, your tax return is put on hold for 6 to 12 to 18 months while the IRS determines which one of you qualifies for the tax credits for the same child. While there is a focus on enhancing the CTC to benefit families more broadly, no specific legislation has been introduced that restricts tax claims solely to fathers who pay child support. So the discussion around the CTC are more centered on increasing benefits to allow more eligibility rather than altering who can claim the children for tax purposes. So the parent receiving child support does not usually report this payment as an income on their tax return, but I personally believe that they should, because a donation of any kind, a gift of any kind, financial or otherwise, is typically required to be claimed on the taxes. The fact that you're giving somebody else a subsidy to offset their income, it's not necessarily a reimbursement to me for something that I owe you or you've done for me. This is an investment, usually a court order. But this means that the child support is considered tax-free for the recipient. Now, the parent making the child support payment usually cannot deduct these amounts from their taxable income. And they do have some tax credits, but it's not a deduction, it's a credit. So the child support payments do not provide any tax advantages to the payer. So overall, the child support is treated as a tax neutral event, meaning it doesn't affect either party's taxable income directly. But if a parent owes back support and this situation arises, tax refunds may be intercepted by the government agencies to cover these debts, but this does not alter the basic tax treatment of regular child support payments. So the ability to claim a child as a dependent on tax returns typically depends on the custody arrangement rather than child support payments. And generally, the custodial parent, which is the one whom the child resides with most of the time, is traditionally the one that claims the child unless otherwise agreed upon. So if Donald Trump were to implement a policy allowing fathers who pay child support to claim child tax credits, several implications could arise, which actually are beneficial. Allowing fathers who pay child support to claim child tax credits could provide significant financial relief. This could help offset the cost of all of the costs that are associated with raising children, particularly for non-custodial parents who often face higher financial burdens. And one of the reasons is because dad's got to pay mom to take care of the child. Dad's got to pay for everything the child needs with their education, medical expenses. And then when dad's at work, dad still got to pay for a babysitter when he has possession of the child. So there is a greater expense because mom never has to pay child support to dad when mom is the primary custodial. And when the genders are reversed and dad is the primary custodial, usually up until recently, the mom wasn't put on child support. If the child stayed with the dad, dad just didn't have to pay child support. But up until recently, there wasn't a requirement for the woman to pay the father the child support, because back in the olden days, back 125 years ago, women didn't have incomes like talking about it. So if she didn't have the child, she didn't have a financial obligation because she didn't have a financial income. But now that you ladies are Fortune 500 women, you should be put on child support and be giving your ex-husband's alimony. Just being fair. Because if he was the breadwinner in your relationship, he would be paying you alimony and child support. If you're the breadwinner in your relationship, you should be paying for alimony and child support. Men should start following the hypergamy theory. Since women want to value themselves based on their income, women need to make more money than men going into the relationship, since the women want to be in control of the relationship. Because if they're not, it makes absolutely no sense that this guy makes 2 times more than you. He's going to give you half of his stuff, and you are the only person in control of the entire operation. Makes absolutely no sense. Back to the story. The policy might influence custody arrangements and negotiations between the parents, because the non-custodial parents might seek to establish or maintain child support agreements that allow them to claim tax credits, which means that some parents might say, no, that's okay. You can keep the kid, because if I give you money for child support, then I can get a tax deduction off of that, potentially leading to more structured co-parenting arrangements where the parents aren't fighting over the child for the entire childhood, which is more beneficial for the child's mental state, because the parental alienation out there right now, where parents are souring the mentality of the child against the other parent, regardless of if it's a male or a female, just so that they can keep the child to themselves until the child ages out of the tax credit scenario, is completely atrocious. There are some horrible parents out there that you really manipulate the children and use the children as a tool to torture the other person in the child's life, the other parent, by depriving the non-custodial parent of right to visitation simply because they can. And a lot of the times, unless it is not the child's biological mother, you can't even sue the person, because if it's the biological mother doing this to you, there is certain states that have torts that dictate that interfering with the fundamental paternal rights is actionable, meaning that you can take civil action against them and get monetary compensation for the deprivation of your constitutional rights, but you can't sue the biological mother of the child. So you got to be careful with that. That may go so far as the person who has a court-ordered right to parent the child could also potentially qualify as the parent of the child as well. So you have to talk to your lawyers about that and see what you could potentially do. But individuals that are in possession of the child and just not giving the child to you, there are some scenarios where legal action can occur, and you could end up getting some type of reparations for that. So fellas, if you are in one of those situations where they're mistreating you with your kid, And you can't withhold the child support. You still got to pay the child support, but you can notate that you are not getting your court-ordered visitation, and you can take some actions against that. So remember, when we're talking about the child support payments, the policy could incentivize timely and consistent child support payments, as fathers may be more motivated to fulfill their obligations if they know they can benefit financially through tax credits. Such a policy can face criticism regarding fairness and equity, because women are going to bitch like there's no tomorrow because the men are not suffering. And that's a horrible position to be in. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, I don't want to watch this podcast because I said it, but I'm going to be truthful. If the shoe was on the other foot and the US government were going to pay women extra money to take care of the children so that the fathers didn't have to pay for the children, the fathers wouldn't complain about that. But if a man has to suffer for a woman to be happy because she's got the kid, and he's no longer suffering, now she's mad. So a tax credit for the men so that he can give her the money. So now she should be satisfied because she's getting the money on time now, because he's not financially struggling anymore. She's mad about that. A lot of the women, just in the last 18 hours, I've heard a lot of complaining about it. And I'm just like, why? Why? You shouldn't be worrying about his income anymore because you're not with him. But if the dude is your ex and he is not suffering to death under a rock, you're not satisfied. And I don't understand that. And a lot of the parents that are in these very nasty custody battles have to deal with exactly that. If you are not suffering in the worst way, they can't put a smile on their face every day. They're like the Grinch of child custody. It's terrible. So critics are arguing that disproportionately the benefits are supposed to favor the fathers over the mothers. And that is a huge misconception, especially in the cases where mothers are the primary caregivers, but may not receive the same financial recognition through the tax credits, because you are in direct possession of the children, and you are currently getting every stimulus check that they put out per child. Didn't I just finish telling you at the beginning of the show? You're getting $1,000 to $2,000 per kid. You got 3 kids, you're getting what? $6,000, $9,000. If he raises it to $5,000, you're getting $15,000. You could technically get the child deductions from the tax season and go and buy you a brand new car because you have 3 children. You could buy you a brand new car cash up front because they're offering you $5,000 a kid for qualifiable children. But a man who's paying all of this money into the system, paying all this money into the child support arrangement, he can't even get an oil change because he's giving you sometimes 2/3 of his income. And people, I've already been talking to you guys that most of us are living at 80 to 90% of our income as it stands. So when we decide to start taking 30% out and giving it to somebody for child support, and that's 30%, not 2/3. 30% is 1/3, but a lot of people are being hit with almost 2/3 their income. But those that are doing 30% of your income, if you're living at 99% of your income or 98% of your income, and now 30% has to go to somebody else, you are at 130% of your income, which means you're wallowing in debt. You got to get you a second job, find you a side hustle, sling you something on a corner somewhere. You got to do something to make you some extra money that people don't even want to agree with the fact that you got it bad, because they feel like, oh, deadbeat dad, he's not there for his kid. Well, if you're working 3 jobs so that one of those jobs is paying for the kid and the other 2 jobs is paying for the house that you never get to go to because you sleep in your car in the parking lot in between jobs so that you're not late for work, you're suffering so that this kid can get, so that the mom can get child support. The kid don't even get the money. Half the time, some of the women don't even spend the money on the kids, and there's another portion of the time where the money is going to the government to satisfy the fact that you're supposed to be paying child support, and the money don't even go to the mom. So there's a larger level of corruption over there that people don't even want to address. But implementing these changes would require clear guidelines and administrative processes to ensure that only the eligible fathers can claim the credits, potentially complicating the tax system further. But the expansion of child credits, specifically for paying fathers, might necessitate adjustments in the overall structure of child credit systems. Because if they enhance that benefit from $1,000 to $2,000 per child to $5,000 total, and both parents can apply for a percentage of that, then the mom could still get her $2,500 that she normally gets per kid, but dad could get $2,500 that he could then give to mom, so that mom could stop beating him over the head for the child support money, and dad can finally take his kid to the park and get some ice cream and stuff. Because that when the men are behind on child support, the women won't let the man see the kid. They're suspending his driver's license, putting them in jail. And if the man keeps going to jail for back child support, how is he going to work a full-time job to pay you to back child support? Now he's in and out of jail, living up underneath a rock. Again, the suffrage I told you that some people expect in order for them to be satisfied. You should never try to make another person suffer. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You should never try to make another person suffer for any reason. They did you dirty. It's water under the bridge. You're supposed to forgive, but you're not supposed to forget. You're supposed to let it go, move on with your life, because that built up animosity is only going to cause you stress, which is going to cause you ulcers, which is going to cause you to have poor health. You die early from stress. But if you don't give a fuck, you're going to live a happier, healthier life. So instead of putting so much effort into making your ex suffer, put more effort into making yourself more successful. One of the things that I talk about on this podcast on a regular basis, making yourself more successful. Because why be crabs in a bucket? In order for you to pull somebody else down, you have to stay down on purpose. If you surpass them, you're no longer able to pull them down because they are beneath you. If they are beneath you, why are you looking down at them? You should be looking up at your opportunities. And if you're looking up at your opportunities, you're no longer paying attention to the people beneath you. So again, why are you focusing on making somebody else suffer if you have nothing to suffer for? That's my tangent for that particular moment there. So as of now, Trump's administration has expressed interest in expanding the child support tax credit, and with proposals suggesting that increase of up to $5,000 per child with those families that are having 5 kids. It's a lot of money. However, specific details about eligibility criteria are changing, and these changes are related to child support payments, and we have not been clearly articulated in this proposal that they're talking about in the Trump administration at this time. So Trump's proposal regarding the child tax credits do not include making that tax claim contingent upon child support payments exclusively. Instead, it is emphasizing on expanding the credit and its benefits for families across various income levels. So while allowing fathers who pay child support to claim tax credits could provide financial benefits and encourage compliance with support obligations, it would also raise questions about fairness and necessitate careful implementation to avoid complications within the existing tax framework. Both mothers and fathers can claim children in their taxes if they meet IRS requirements for dependency and support. So the notion that only fathers who pay child support can claim children is not accurate. Eligibility is based on specific criteria rather than solely on financial support payments. Since Trump's proposal for the External Revenue Service is going to reflect his ongoing commitment to reshape U.S. trade policies and increase revenue through tariffs rather than traditional taxation methods, he's preparing for his second term, and the implementation of this plan will depend significantly on the congressional actions and public response to potential changes in the trade policies. So another thing we have is that since Trump is aiming to make money provisions from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent, which could continue to lower overall tax burdens for many taxpayers, particularly benefiting middle and upper class income households, he has proposed reducing that corporate tax rate from 21 to 20% and as low as a 15% for companies manufacturing in the U.S. Trump plans to include imposing a universal 20% tariff on all imposing goods, with a potential increase to 60% imports from China. And this shift aims to replace some aspects of income tax with tariffs, but does not eliminate the obligation to pay taxes. The child tax credit is proposed to increase significantly, providing additional relief for those families. And while Trump is advocating for significant changes in the structure, including a shift towards tariffs and lower corporate taxes, there is no indication that he intends to make the taxation that we deal with on a day-to-day basis voluntary. Instead, his proposals appear aimed at restructuring how taxes are collected rather than removing the requirement for citizens to pay taxes. So what does it all mean? Well, Trump's 2025 tax revolution has the potential to be a game changer, but it's not without its risks and controversies. As we move forward, it's crucial that we stay informed and vigilant, ensuring that our voices are heard and our interests are protected. And I haven't even heard about that 4B movement in a moment. So, I mean, I'm guessing that they got used to, or they just got tired of going into retirement because they don't have accessibility to that plan B option and abortion scenario. But there are some that are still shaving their hair like Britney Spears back in the early 90s and walking around hating men. And I'm going to be honest with you. We had the election that occurred in November. The man won by almost 70 something percent, and there are 51% of women in America. So before any woman wants to go protesting about the birth control rights and their autonomy to their body, you have to remember that the women outnumber the men in voting rights by 50% plus one, which is the requirement to become a president. So if 100% of the women voted for Kamala Harris, Kamala would have been the president. The fact that Kamala barely got 50% of the votes, less than 50% of the votes, is because women and men alike all voted for Donald Trump. So before you start hating men and hating the U.S. government, when Donald Trump said he was going to do the things that he said he was going to do, and now he's doing it in the most extreme way possible, I'm going to tell you that the everyday to-day man that works hard to make an income for himself so that he can afford to provide for the woman that he's dedicating himself to should not be treated like garbage, because there are more women voting than men. And with more women voting than men, more than half of Trump's supporters were women. Okay. So you got to really stop treating the men like garbage. It ain't the men's fault that we got Donald Trump in office. We may have contributed to the situation, but we weren't at fault for it, because there's 50% women in the United States. Out of the 355 million Americans, more than half are women. So in order for the country to have a man as president, more than half of the women had to vote for the man. Look at your numbers now, ladies. Go back and look at the polls. Go back and look at how many people voted for the man, and look at the population distribution, and recognize that only 165 million men can vote. That are not, and it's going to be less than that, because you got to think about all the men that aren't currently allowed to vote because they're convicted felons. So out of the men that aren't convicted felons, you got closer to 140. And then you've got to think about the fact that the majority of the population are women, which is one of the reasons why we say women outnumber men 2-1, which is another reason why we say we don't understand why women don't share the men instead of them fighting over the men. And then we don't understand why the women are treating the men like garbage when there's more women, more available women in this country than there are available men. There are more single unmarried men because they're tired of the bullshit, but more often than not, there is going to be a single unmarried middle-aged woman that is a successful Fortune 500 woman, because she went up the corporate ladder. She put her job before her relationships. She decided not to have children. And now that she is 35, 45, 55, she's looking for somebody to make her happy, but she's expecting him to make more money than her. And the more money that she makes, the less options that she has, because the majority of men make less than $55,000 a year. I'm talking about like 70% of the men make $55,000 a year. So If she's making 100,000 a year, there's only 14% of men left available for her to select. Now, notice the dynamic is not going to be the same when men are selecting women, because women are not valued by their career. Women are valued based on their ability to cooperate with men. Women are valued by their partnership skills, their organizational skills, so their attitude, that's what they're going to be judged on. They're going to be valued on how the man feels about how the way he's being treated by her. So the fact is that a woman's value is not going to come from her income. So a man can be a Fortune 500, $100,000 a year man and go get a woman that doesn't have a job. You can go and get a woman that makes less than $20,000 a year. But a man is not going to be selected if he's got a $30,000 a year job. He's not going to be selected by a $200,000 a year woman. He's not going to be selected by a $75,000 a year woman. Hell, he'll be at best in a friend zone with a female that's a $50,000 a year woman, when the average median income for minority women is $42,000 to $48,000. So if he's making 35, she's still going to say that he's broke. So with that being said, the hypergamy theory only works with women because women want an increased standard of living when they date somebody. What's going on, Rooterus? But the women are not going to be selected because the men want a greater standard of living. So you got to sit on that. That's the way things have been going. So, Rooterus, we've been sitting over here talking about taxation. We've been sitting over here talking about the external revenue funds. So when you get old enough to start paying taxes, you'll be able to enjoy the fact that there's going to be less taxes coming your way. They're offering expanded child support credit options for those individuals that are dealing with broken homes and single parents and stuff to that effect. Yeah, I'm doing good. I've been doing a lot of business and finance. So, I've got all of my clients in Asia. So they're bringing a lot of things to my attention. So I'm like, I gotta have to bring some of this stuff to the show, because apparently foreign nationals care more about what happens in this country than the people in this country, which is crazy. And then I've been doing a lot of investments and following the stock market because California is still on fire. So, I'm trying to see with those real estate investment trusts that I was telling you guys to invest in before, how is the market shifting with those investment trusts that are impacted by the California fire? Because those buildings that burn to the ground are no longer turning over revenue, and they're going to cost a lot of money to rebuild. So those real estate investment trusts that were heavily impacted by the current fire is going to start taking a dividend loss in next month's payout. So I'm following the stock market to see which ones got impacted, which ones had a depreciation on them. And then I'm going to bring it to the show and tell you guys about it, because some of the real estate investment trusts are closer to 20% returns. And that's a whole lot better than the regular stock market that's doing between 4 and 7% returns. Highest NASDAQ stock option that's not a REIT is closer to 10% return. But you also have to understand that the market is fluctuating right now with the new economy, and with Bitcoin looking at 80% return on average. I'm just trying to see where everything is going to sit, because I got to see where I'm going to sit my money like duck, duck, goose. This is going to be like the merry-go-round where you're supposed to be trying to do the little dance and then sit in the chair. I forgot the name of that dance we did as a kid, but now we're going to be doing it with money. So as we move forward into 2025, I want to make sure that you guys know everything you can know to make money for you. And as the new scenery occurs, as things shift, as money is spent, I want you guys to be able to see how, as I go along doing it, you could have done it too. Because if this 4 years turns out to be a fantastic 4 years for the bottom 99%, it'll be the last 4 years. If this 4 years becomes the worst 4 years for minority individuals and low-income individuals, it'll be the last 4 years. Because this is the last term that this man is going to have in his lifetime. Not because he can't change the constitutional laws in order to give himself a third term, but because the likelihood that he's going to have enough willpower in his movement to operate at the same age as Joe Biden and still do a third term is highly unlikely, because the man is in the high 70s, low 80s right now. And 4 years from now, he's going to be straight up in the low 80s, which means that I don't see him being president till he's 90. See what I'm saying? So with that being said, we're coming into a new year. We're going to be doing a lot of big things. And as we do those big things, I'm going to keep you guys up to date. So make sure that you like and subscribe, hit that follow button, follow us on Twitch, follow us on Twitter, and also follow us on YouTube, because as I get the late breaking news, I'm adding more stories to the lineup. That's one of the reasons why the lineup stopped, because so many breaking news stories have happened in the past week. I'm trying to debate which ones I'm going to put on the show so that I can try to maintain consistency with the information I provide to you guys, but not miss out on things that you actually might find important. So I show you guys a lot of love, but I also pay attention to what's best for you before I start doing what I think is necessary for myself, because at the end of the day, you come to this podcast to learn something. You don't come to this podcast to twiddle your thumbs and occupy your time because you're bored. Special shout out to Red Void and Omni81 over there on the Twitch side of things. I saw you when you popped in. And I appreciate you when you pop in on the YouTube side of things before you pop in onto the Twitch side of things. Thank you for giving me 2 thumbs up. I notice you. I see you navigating around. Don't think that little tick mark where you normally sit at isn't there. I see it. So I want to make sure that you know that I really appreciate that. Beyond that, that's going to be all that we're going to have for today. We're going to wrap things up with tonight's show. Make sure that you guys hang around for that closing song, Higher Ground, because we had the song released in December. We've been doing a good job. We actually heard that it actually started going viral on one of the other streaming platforms. So I'm waiting to see first quarter results come March. So this is just the first month that the song has been out, and I'm really excited about the way it goes, because it does really emphasize the goals and ambitions and drives that we have here on this podcast. So I want to make sure that you guys enjoy it, make sure that you guys like and subscribe it, and if you have the opportunity, that you can click the link and go over to that particular song and like that, because it actually is the exclusive song for this podcast. So you will see this and that logo on that 5-track album, and I would love to see this do way better than Nick Cannon's career, because I would never let him live it down. So make sure that you go over there and take a listen to some of them, because we still have other songs on the album, like Non-Negotiables and Higher Protocol. I do believe that's what it's called. So I want to make sure that you guys take a look at those and enjoy them. And if you want to purchase them for download, we have a link on the show too for that, where you can find that over at the Amazon selection, where you can get it off of Amazon Prime. So with that being said, I appreciate you guys coming to the show tonight. I'm going to tell you guys before I walk out of the room, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you to make it make sense. So fellas, say it with me, ladies, make it make sense. Fellas, we really appreciate you coming, because without you, we got 87% of y'all are men right now. 30% of y'all are from Russia. I got to give a special shout out to Russia, and we're going to have to do a show about Russia on Monday, just talking about all the many opportunities that Russia holds, because they have been our number one follower in the past 45 days. So we're going to be talking about Russia coming up soon. And we're without you guys, I wouldn't know where I'd be at. So I really appreciate you guys. Keep supporting us. Keep coming. You're going to learn so many things from coming to this podcast, that you'll be able to make so many different decisions. And going forward, this is going to make sense for you the way I make it make sense for me. So I want to thank you guys for coming to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. I'm going to see you guys tomorrow night, 10 o'clock.
That's my personal command. I'm not mounted on higher ground where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds, raising the bar, breaking ground. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never yield.